evening, everyone. I think we can make a start. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. I'm Councillor James Husband, Chairman of the committee, and to my right are my fellow councillors, and we will be the people making the decisions on the cases in front of us this evening. To my left, I'm joined by officers of the Planning Department who will be presenting the cases in front of us and also advising us as we go through the evening. Okay. And this evening, the officers are led by Wade Banks, who's sitting immediately on my left. Okay. So we can get underway. First of all, are there any apologies for absence? No, there are none. Are there any declarations of interest? There are none. Are there any other declarations? Walla.
One of the applications in the south section is in my ward, but I haven't discussed it with anyone yet.
So in other words, you can. There's not a problem about you sitting on the committee to decide an application if you've not discussed it with anyone. Very good. Well, what I think might help before we get underway is I'll indicate the order in which we're going to consider the various items in front of us this evening. So just very, very quickly, in a moment or two, we're going to start with the Nottingdale Heat Network. We will then move to Bassett Road, Ladbroke Grove, Cottesmore Gardens, Victoria Road, I should say, apologies, before moving on to the Little Boltons, Camden Hill Square, Moore Street, Albert House in Kelso Place, Hewer Street, Cranley Gardens, and concluding with Glebe Place and Mallard Street. So that will be our order of business. So we can make a start, and I think we will start with the strategic pack, and I think Julia Drevetsky, Julia, you're going to present the Strat's paper on Notting Hill Heat Network, aren't you? So please, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. So this planning permission was granted in March last year for a district heating pipe network, construction of warm water store, renewable boiler rooms, heat pump system, and other works within the Lancaster West estate. This current application in front of members tonight is seeking changes to the previously granted scheme under the Section 73. The changes include the changes to the pipework. Members can see the previously granted section and the current scheme on the screen. And again, changes to the pipework and changes between the previously granted scheme and the current one. The application is also seeking to increase the size of the plant enclosure and bollards. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, colleagues, about this? Walla.
Thank you, Chair. What prompted the changes?
Thank you. I'm not sure, however, given they've implemented already and they carry out the works, I'm assuming given the stage of the work and the design, they've just amended the route of the pipe works.
If we are to decide on something, we need to understand why it was changed. It was already approved at this level, and then now you're changing. I would like to understand why we're changing it.
Yes, so as part of the Section 73, the applicant is allowed to change and make changes to the previously granted scheme. That can be done under Section 73, and in this case, the changes of the layout of the pipe works just been carried out and are proposed by the applicant.
I think, if I understand the documents correctly, that these pipes are actually underground. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Right, so there's actually no, it's not in fact visible at all. Lloyd, just quickly.
Yeah, just a quick thing. I just noticed properties notified, 1, and no objections. Is 1 the correct number of properties that were notified on this, and if so, why?
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. I did check. We actually consulted 966 properties. That's part of the part 8 of the report. I think it's just the front sheet. It just shows the wrong number.
So just a typo in the documents. Thank you so much.
Arian, yeah? Do you want to?
So just checking if there's any disruption to the leisure centre and surroundings, whether it road closures or anything. Thank you.
Thank you. As part of the recommended conditions, we have recommended the same conditions as the original application, and some of them included the construction method statement. I believe our colleagues in the highways teams also been consulted, and they were satisfied with the information provided to us.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, there are no speakers for this case, so the recommendation is to grant permission for this work. If there are no further questions, I think we can just move to a vote. Yeah. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? Okay, so that is agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. If we could now move on to the consider the application in Bassett Road. And that's Julia, that's you again, isn't it?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so this planning permission was granted previously to create 6 residential units with various extensions. This current application is seeking changes again as part of Section 73 to previously granted scheme to include relocation of black railings to increase the size of the balcony for apartment 4. I'll just run some of the slides for members. You can see the site location plan showing the site outline in red. The area view with the property under construction at the moment of that photograph. Some site photographs taken from the site. Members can see the existing railings and the one over here looking forward to 51 Bassett Road, the one on the right-hand side, and properties along St. Mark's Road on the left-hand side. This photo has been used from one of the comments received, showing the existing balconies at the application site. We've got the existing site plan. It is worth to note that the existing balcony has been benefits from a planning permission that was granted as part of the appeal, and this application is only seeking permission for the additional area, which members can see on this slide here. So the application is to increase the balcony to one side and a little bit to north. And that shows existing and proposed elevations. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, we have speakers for this case. In particular, we have objectors. So we have local councillor Dent Code, and also Mrs. Purcell Williams, and I think you're both here, yeah. So you've got between you've got up to 5 minutes. So please go ahead when you're ready. Emma, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will be speaking for as long as up to 5 minutes, and Mrs. Purcell Williams will answer any questions. I just want to very briefly, I live 2 doors from this building, give a little bit of history. The building was owned by the council, and after various uses was left empty 15 years ago. It was then squatted and then sold. There was a huge row that we've all been subjected to about potentially turning the building into a private school. That put us through the ringer for about 3 years. Finally, that fell through, and this permission was granted in 2017 to create the 6 residential units. So we have already been through quite a story. Then the construction started, of course. There have been countless variations and additions to this building. It seems to be spreading and spreading, including an extra story on top of the, on what was the stables, and these balconies. It seems to be a war of attrition, actually, against the neighbours, who are all exhausted by it, waged by people with a seemingly bottomless fund for legal advice, which we certainly don't. And this is versus a very long-standing and close-knit community, including, for example, our neighbour, Mr. Crutchley, whose family have lived in his house since it was built. This is not a mine material amendment. The balcony is to be increased by a considerable amount, and it is a new application. It's the 4th proposal for a balcony. The first 2 were rejected for perfectly good reasons. The 3rd, which was also refused, then went to the Secretary of State, and along the way we were to ensure that the balcony was the minimum size possible. However, it's to be increased now by 75% if you measure it correctly. It looks directly over the gardens of 91 and 89, where there was no overlooking apart from sash windows that we all have. The living conditions will be considerably changed, and for Mrs. Purcell-Williams, she will be overlooked, and indeed the balcony will give a better view into the only window that she has that gets any sunlight, which is on the side of the building, which is her kitchen. So will it have an acceptable impact on the neighbouring living conditions? Yes, it will. It will overlook the gardens by more, and Mrs. Purcell-Williams will not have peace in her kitchen, where there's already going to be an extension built more or less in front of it, which is quite unacceptable. So on the whole, the objectors will tolerate the current approval, which was agreed by the Secretary of State, which had area of planting to give a bit of baffle and a bit of privacy to Mrs. Purcell-Williams. It's just about tolerable, but it will not agree to the 75% increase and the removal of the planting area and the baffle of the noise and so on. It's just a step too far, and there was some objection at some point about everybody should have a bit of outside space. None of us sitting here have any outside space, and that's completely normal, though it's rather a shame. So we're asking the committee, please, to stick to the approved process and regulations of the planning process and refuse this extension that will cause considerable discomfort to my neighbours and is yet another chapter in the war of attrition against a long-standing community. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now, is Mr. Lennon present? So you're representing the applicant, yeah? So when you're ready, you actually have up to 5 minutes if you need it, but
yes,
please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, yeah. So thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak today in support of this application for minor material amendments. As you will know from the committee report and the presentation tonight, the committee report recommending approval of the application, the principle of a balcony is, at this address is already established via the original permission, which was approved by the Inspector at Appeal. This application is being made on behalf of the occupier who bought the property, and the developer no longer has anything to do with it. The planning inspector for the appeal summarising their decision letter that the neighbouring properties on St Mark's Road are 4 and 5 stories tall with many rear-facing windows, most of which are at a similar lower height than the balcony here, and that balcony in this location would therefore not result in unacceptable levels of overlooking within this rear environment. The inspector also noted that this property and the entire surrounding environment also feature rear gardens and external amenity areas, including terraces and balconies at a similar height to the relevant balcony here. The application seeks to move the balustrade 30 centimetres outwards, it's not an extension, to move the internal balustrade as such so that the accessible area of the balcony also becomes 1.6 metres wider to the right-hand side, which is where the area of planting was previously. This change would not, in our view, undermine the conclusions of the inspector reached in relation to overlooking or increased noise levels, as the balcony still remains limited in depth in comparison to other neighbouring amenity areas, and there would continue to be rear windows, balconies and terraces at a similar height along St Mark's Road. The proposed widening of the balustrade would also allow access to an existing area located away from St Mark's Road, closer to 51 Bassett Road, which is where the area of planting was previously proposed. But there's only one window on this side of this, on the elevation of 51 Bassett Road, and the sightline to this window is existing. The change would instead provide for a better quality private amenity space. As mentioned, we're not seeking a large extension. Rather, in this case, we're seeking to place the balustrade in its natural position, where there's an existing brick parapet wall at the edge of the balcony. It would therefore just remain domestic in size and would simply serve the dwelling to which it relates, where there's already a natural brick parapet wall. As per the current permission, it's our view that the design currently with the balustrade set back from the wall is at odds with other balconies here and for most other developments, because balustrades naturally sit on the wall rather than behind the wall, as is well-established practice. As the case officers also concluded in their recommendation for approval, these amendments continue to align with the appeals inspectors' inclusions, which we give significant weight to, and the relevant policy of the RBKC local plan and the London plan. I therefore respectfully request that permission is granted accordingly. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. So, colleagues, questions to either party? Any questions? Who'd like to go first? Mo.
A question to the applicant. We heard the objectors saying that it's 75% increase of the previous. Could you confirm what the difference between the current permission you have and the application you have submitted right now?
So I'm not sure of the exact floor space increase, but the approved balustrade is being moved 30 centimetres outwards along the brick wall and 1.6 metres to the right-hand side.
Don't you think this will have an impact on the immediate neighbors using the balcony specifically?
But the change to the balustrade would be so minimal, 30 centimetres, that they barely have any more space to view out onto St Mark's Road as it is. And as the inspector concluded, there's already such a level of rear windows and terraces within this environment that the level of overlooking won't increase as a result of this. And also the surrounding environment includes so many terraces and balconies. Sorry, let me just refer to my. Also, sorry, the point about the brick parapet wall. There will be a level that if you keep increasing a balcony in size, even if there's so many of the balconies in the rear of these properties, they will eventually reach a level where there is an unacceptable level of overlooking. But in this case, we're merely moving the balustrade along the wall that already exists, and actually there's nothing stopping the current occupier from accessing some of the areas that the floor space will increase to. He would merely just need to climb over the balustrade that currently exists, or just lean over the balustrade along facing St Mark's Road. Obviously, we doubt he would do that, but that's worth mentioning as well.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on my colleague's comments, I understand 30 centimeters may not be much when you consider the measurement, but the west side 1.7 increase, is that facing on Bassett Road towards the eastern wall of the next property? Is my assumption correct?
It's facing towards 51 Bassett Road, yes.
So on the other side, facing the wall of the Bassett Road, the property windows, or when you talk about privacy issues, could you just roughly estimate, or for our understanding, how many properties will be overlooked or overlooking from the property?
So there's only one window that can be viewed from that side of the balcony when facing that direction, and there's an existing line of sight already from the balcony there. It's the window at 51 Bassett Road.
Thank you. One follow-up. You heard from the objectors, obviously, that's on St Mark's Road number 91. So that, obviously you're the applicant. In fair assumption, you think that 30 centimeters won't cause any privacy issues or overlooking?
Absolutely not. It's such a minor distance, it won't increase the levels of overlooking.
Can I have a counter comment from the objectors, please? Thank you. for the statement made by the applicant about the 30 centimeters increase.
Hello. Well, it might be just one window onto 51 Bassett Road, but that happens to be my kitchen window, and I use it quite a lot. And it is the one window that actually has very little light coming in already, and so it's going to make a huge difference. And I would ask anyone to come into the gardens at the back of St. Mark's Road, either 89 or 91. You can see clearly they are like balconies looking down onto the gardens. And we have been putting up with this thing for years, the constant applications going in. Everybody now, my friend that was going, we're just exhausted from it, exhausted from yet more and more and more. It has changed the back. If you knew what the place was like, of course we've got to keep going with, progress, buildings, things getting a bit more noisy. But this is beyond the beyond. I mean, outside at the back, and the influence that has on the likes of, we'll say, the other houses. Forget about Oxford Gardens. The distance is too great. It's the ones nearer that the impact is going to be heavily on. And the higher up these things are, and this is a first floor, isn't it? It's second floor issue. The sound will be greater. And it's the very fact that it's been increased by 75%, and the plans have been changed since it's gone to the Secretary of State. I think that's appalling and shouldn't be allowed.
Just very quickly, you're on the second floor, if I understand correctly. Is that correct? Your property is on the second floor.
I'm actually on the first floor.
First floor, right? Thank you.
Of 51.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much, all of you. Thank you. So our opportunity for questions to officers about this. Wala, would you like to go first? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on 6.11, visual and privacy. It says here at the end of the first sentence, and the minor scale of the proposed increase to this balcony, the balcony, the location of the railing would material. I'm curious, when you say minor, how much is that minor?
That will be within your judgment, within your planning judgment, how much minor?
What is, I mean, how much is it? Is it 50 centimeters, 30 centimeters, a whole meter? How much is that?
I can bring up the plans, that might be easier. Let me just. Okay. So this is the existing plan. This is the existing area where the balcony is. And the thick black line, that's the railings. So as part of this application, they are proposing to move the railing from here 1.7 meter towards this side, towards 51 Bassett Road, and then from this line going up by 30 centimeters. I'll bring this side photograph as well. So again, this is the side railings. They're proposing to move it towards here by 1.7 meters and 30 centimeters here. That's correct, yes. So from this line here, they're proposing to extend it towards here. I'll show on the floor plan as well. There we go.
And did we do a test to see if that will cause overlooking for the neighbor?
Yeah, so those photographs actually been taken by the planning officer who visited the site, and as part of the assessment, they've concluded that there was not going to be an additional level of overlooking. Members can see, and I agree with the speakers, there is quite already overlooking from the existing balconies. So what members need to assess it, the additional level of on the space of the balcony.
Do we know the distance from the railing, the 30 centimeter pushed railing, and all the way up to the end of the building? Do we know how much is that?
No, so we'll be on this photo, but that photo might be the best way. It's from here to 30 meters towards the brick, which you can see. You'll be able to see the neighbors either you standing here or a little bit closer.
Thank you. Can I ask a question in comparison, the balcony below on the first floor, directly below, and also on the plan that we have in front of us to the left, is the balcony on the second floor there any wider than the two balconies below it? And also, looking opposite, the balconies that are existing on the other buildings, is this building any deeper than those balconies that it faces on across?
Again, it might be best if I go through the plan, sorry. So yes, maybe on this photograph, the area view, I just want to point out that that was under the construction. So the existing balcony and the one we're discussing tonight is on this level here. So members can understand the relationship between the existing properties along St. Mark's Road, Bassett Road, and also on Oxford Gardens. The other railings, again, that might be helpful from the objectors. There are already existing balconies on the lower level. This is the balcony we are discussing tonight. So the railings from this location is proposed to be moved 1.7 meters towards here. And then on the elevation, again, on the left-hand side is the previously granted scheme when the railings would end just by the door. And in this current case, they are proposing to move it towards 51 Bassett Road. Hopefully that understands.
Yes, just to clarify then that on the proposed scheme, the two balconies that we can see below this apartment are the same width, in effect, as the one above it. And then on the photograph that you've seen, where it looks onto the opposite balconies on St. Mark's, the depth of those balconies is obviously deeper than the current balcony.
I don't have that photograph, but if I can ask members to look at...
It's in the pack that you provided.
In the pack, yeah.
Yep.
Members scroll.
There's a white painted building, and then there's a brick one to its left. They have two balconies with the railings right to the edge. And it looks to me that they are deeper balconies than the one that's being proposed here.
On the lower levels, I think you might be right, but I can't confirm it just because I didn't measure the lower levels.
Sorry, just to interlude, but the balcony...
Okay.
But I think we just go back to the photographs. Yeah, that one.
The next one.
No, next one.
The next one.
Sorry, next photograph.
That's it.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's the one.
There's a white painted brickwork building with a balcony above at the same level, and one to its left, which is the brick building with the balcony with the railings right towards the edge. I'm suggesting that those two balconies are deeper than the one we're talking about tonight, and the ones on the plan that are directly below where that photograph's taken is the same length. The railings will be the same length, so the balcony width will be the same for comparables.
If I just looking at this photograph, the railings closer to us, that's definitely not wider than the one is proposing. The one further along, possibly, but again, we don't have the measurements of it. But I would like to bring also attention to the lower levels. There are balconies there as well. Yeah.
Any other questions? Arian.
Julia, could you go back to the previous photograph? Yeah. So regardless of 1.7 increase towards the west side, which is the Bassett Road, the next property down there is number 51, is that correct? And there's a gap. Could you just imagine what the gap would be?
We don't. There's just a gap between the buildings at this stage.
Yeah. So okay. So that black one, the roof terrace is the distance gap, right?
That's correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
I actually might be able to answer that question. From a previous question, I was looking on Google Maps, and this is an approximate measurement based on Google Maps, so please take it as approximate. But I've measured from the image which shows the building currently under construction, and you can see where the current balcony would sit, and I've measured it, and it's approximately 14 meters. But again, please just bear in mind that's off Google Maps and not an exact measurement.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So colleagues, we need to make a decision about this. I mean, my own feeling is that it's a bit mixed, because this committee did actually refuse this balcony, a previous application. So its very existence, in fact, was refused by us. However, it was granted on appeal, and we've got to accept that as an important consideration. I think the question was sensibly posed about the extent of what's material and not. I would suggest, and it's just my own personal opinion, 30 centimetres is going down to the sort of level that the planning system really doesn't get involved in. It's really quite small. 1.7 metres, though, is more. However, we've heard the officers, and it reflected obviously in the report, that there is inevitably in a location such as this a lot of overlooking. I think we should also accept, and this is really outside our decision making, but if you were a local neighbour, this building has had an enormous planning history. It's had several owners. It's had masses of planning applications. It's been very difficult if you've been somebody who lived immediately nearby, trying to keep track of what's going on with this building and what the various people who've owned it are trying to do. But I think probably on balance, because of the smallish nature of what's proposed, I think it probably needs to be considered acceptable. But we probably could argue otherwise, just about, if we wanted to. But what colleagues, what do we think about this?
Well, I think going back, we know this building has been, the matter of time came to the planning, and many parties were interested in. But in my view, even though the front is 30 centimeters, but the side extension is much wider than that. So I will take that in deep consideration. I think therefore I won't be voting for this.
You're minded to vote in favour of it. No, again, sorry, I beg your pardon. I was wondering about that. Sorry, I probably misheard you. Other opinions?
As Mohammed said, the 30 centimeters is really minor, but the 175 is almost 2 meters, and that's a serious consideration. And you need to also consider the impact on the neighborhood that this building is causing going forward. And if we grant tonight, then they will probably, I don't know, they probably continue coming up with new proposals, new ideas, new balconies, new extensions. And the history is not very comforting.
Uh, 30 centimeters is not I believe in terms of measurement, not a big change 1.7 indeed would be, but unfairly looking at the gap between 49 and 51, 40 meters is quite wide. 49, yeah, 40 meters, I mean the gap between two buildings, but I'm still unable to make a decision, Chairman. That's where my stance.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Lloyd, what do you make of this?
I must admit, I'm like you, Chair. I'm kind of mixed feelings on this one. I do realise the issues that residents have been put under, but I understand that this is a new application from the new property owner rather than the site owner. So this is a new person coming to it, and what they're trying to do is no different from the balcony below and directly below to the side, and is no deeper than the balconies that it looks opposite onto. So I consider it as a new person putting an application in, it's a fair one, but in putting it into the context of the previous applications, of course, it's another thing. So I can imagine if I lived there, I would think very differently. So I have very mixed views on this.
Well, I think what we should probably do is let's put the recommendation to a vote and see where we go. So the recommendation, obviously in the report, is to grant planning permission, set out in the report with conditions attached. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? Can I see those against? Does anyone wish to abstain? Okay, well, this doesn't often happen. So there are 2 votes in favour. There are 2 votes against the recommendation, with 1 abstention. In that case, the proper procedure is I have a casting vote as chairman of committee, and I cast that on balance the application should be granted. So it's granted on that basis. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. If we could now turn to the application in Ladbroke Grove, please. And I think once again, Julia, you're going to present that report, yeah?
That's correct. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I would like to bring members' attention to the addendum report. There has been some additional objections which members can see. This application is seeking planning permission for replacement of front doors. Just to bring members to attention to the screen, that's the site location plan with the property outlined in red. Site photographs showing the existing building and the existing doors on the left-hand side, and then the wider group of buildings that the application forms part of on the right-hand side. And then the existing and proposed elevation, the existing on the left-hand side and the proposed new front door on the right-hand side. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the objector is Mr. Peter Collett present. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much indeed. And you live nearby, don't you? You're an immediate neighbour.
I do. I'm an immediate neighbour.
Yeah. So please, sir, when you're ready, you've got up to 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, councillors. I should say that I'm also the convener of the 41 to 49 Ladbroke Grove Leaseholders Association, and also the chair of the Hanover Gardens Committee, which is the gardens immediately behind 41 to 49 Ladbroke Grove. However, I am speaking on my own behalf and representing those who have raised objections to this application. 41 to 49 Ladbroke Grove is what remains of one of the earliest terraces on the Ladbroke estate, and as the submission from the Ladbroke Association, which you have, says, the Ladbroke Conservation Area appraisal makes clear that on terraces, quote, the unified features to all elevations, such as windows, stucco details, doors and porches, make an essential contribution to the area's character, which suffers when these have been lost, end of quote. And as the association also says, this particular terrace, from the point of view of uniform features, is one of the most perfect in the area, and it would be harmful to the conservation area if the present uniformity were lost. The terrace is subject to an Article 4 direction relating to doors and windows precisely in order to preserve this unified appearance. The present front doors of this row of houses are identical, but we agree with the applicant that they are now shoddy, out of keeping with the age of the houses, and should be replaced. We also agree that the proposed front door to 41 Ladbroke Grove would represent some improvement, but for that house alone. It would break the uniformity of the terrace. There is also doubt, as aired by the Ladbroke Association submission, whether the proposed design of the door is authentic, and the distinct possibility that originally the doors on this terrace were double, not single. And the association has provided local examples of this to you. My proposal, therefore, is that approval of this application is refused to facilitate a joint application by all 5 houses in the terrace to replace all the doors with identical and historically appropriate ones. This would maintain the uniformity of the terrace and be a significant enhancement to the whole neighbourhood. I should also add that this application was possible because the leaseholders of 41 Ladbroke Grove recently obtained the freehold of the property. The leaseholders of the remaining houses in this terrace should obtain their freeholds this month. And in the new Leaseholders Association, we now have the mechanism to coordinate such applications and assure uniformity to everybody's advantage. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now, are we also joined by Mr. Senior? Ah, right, yes. And you're actually the applicant, are you?
I am indeed, yes.
Yeah, very good.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for considering this application. The current front door more resembles a commercial shop door entrance rather than that of a prestigious communal garden terraced house. It is noteworthy that despite every resident of number 41 being in favour, the local society does not support the application. As a member myself of the Ladbroke Society and a fellow resident within the conservation area, I highly value the neighbourhood's design and style and believe that this proposal does meet the high standards local applications should aim to achieve. The Ladbroke Society's preference for a double door significantly alters the existing design. The numerous doors within the Ladbroke Conservation Area are nearly identical to the one proposed in the application, which is consistent with the intended design. The neighbours' initiative to undertake these changes independently should be considered on its own merits, as each application and property must be evaluated individually. It is observed that many objections do not concern the design itself, but rather the timing, as my fellow objector has mentioned, as some neighbours object because their doors are not being updated simultaneously. This is not a valid reason on its own to refuse this minor application. Set a precedent that requires waiting for all neighbours, a total of 16 other leaseholders in this case, to agree on a design, collect funds, and engage an architect would cause significant and unnecessary delays. One objection suggests that further research be conducted. I have personally, with my architect, reviewed all available archives, including multiple microfiche records from the council. I've dedicated many hours to ascertain what was originally installed. Despite our efforts, we have not been able to conclusively determine the original design from more than 100 years ago. However, the proposed design does closely resemble that of hundreds of neighbouring properties built during the same period in the local area. I sincerely hope councillors will consider approving the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, questions to either party? Who would like to go? Walla.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the objector. the proposed door, you did mention that the doors, the existing doors are very out of keeping and old and a little bit shoddy. So the proposed door, do you accept it as something, is that something acceptable for you? Is it appealing? Is it something you would consider maybe the rest of the houses, the rest of the adopt?
Yes, subject to two provisos, I think. The first is to try and complete the research of what the original doors looked like and to see whether indeed they were single doors or double doors. We don't actually know because I have not seen a photograph of the terrace earlier than about 1940, I think, when the existing doors were there, 1945. But I suspect that there may be some which we haven't and which James has not been able to dig out. I don't know. Secondly, that even if the design of the present door is historical and acceptable, I don't have any huge objections to it. It's certainly better than what is there at the moment. What I don't want is that all of the leaseholders and residents of the terrace should be forced in future to adopt that design because it has been adopted for one house in the terrace, rather than being able to get together and decide amongst themselves what they fancy. People may have better ideas or have dug up better things. I just don't want the whole thing to be forced by one decision ahead of all the others.
I must admit, as an objector to I'm coming this from a perspective that not as an individual owner, but for the conservation area itself, and I have to say you make a compelling case on this. That's not to say that we don't want to prevent someone from improving their front door, but it would seem prudent if what you're saying, and I'll ask the applicant in just a second the same question. If you're confident that the rest of the terrace can come to an agreement on this, then surely the outcome would be that it would be beneficial to everybody else in the Royal Borough of Keynes and Chelsea that this terrace did have matching doors, whether they were the original proposal that's going forward here or not. And you're saying that you're quite confident that this can be reached within a period of months, rather than a long protracted period, because of the ownership is going to change. Is that my correct understanding?
Yes, indeed. I mean, we need the ownership to change. We're coming to the end of that enfranchisement process, hopefully this month, because the doors are obviously part of the common areas of the house. They're not part of the lease of any particular leaseholder. So the freeholder needs to be the one engaged, but the freeholders will be collectively the leaseholders. And I'm convinced, from having gone through the process over the last few months of coordinating amongst those 16 leaseholders the whole process of obtaining the freehold, which is, as you know, is quite a complicated, slightly bureaucratic process, that we will be able to come to an agreement at the end, including the 4 leaseholders of number 41, which is the subject of the present application, and that it will be, as you say, Councillor, advantageous in the future to maintain the unity and for everybody to be bought into whatever that design happens to be.
So the flip side to that coin is, could I ask the applicant, would it be fair and reasonable to ask for a delay in this submission so that you could agree with your neighbours a uniform choice for the terrace, which may well be the one that you're suggesting at the moment? Would that seem a reasonable change to this?
No, simply. What is reasonable? A day, a week, a month? We're talking about 20 different leaseholders all coming to a decision. What if we have 10 that agree with it and 10 that don't disagree with it? Where do we draw the line with this? We've got 4 in the building, myself included, who are all, we've worked together on this application. We've decided between us that we feel that this is the most appropriate for the neighbourhood, for the terrace and for the house. If we were then to have to work with 16 others, perhaps we would not come to a conclusion. I understand the concept of the freehold being purchased. I've gone through the process myself. I'm also part of the Leasehold Association with Peter to go through this. It has been a long process, They're almost a year down the line to get to this point, and they'll get the freehold shortly. Perhaps it might take another year for them to then decide on the doors, perhaps not. But my understanding is that applications should be judged on their own merits, not in conjunction with any neighbour who might want to have a say in it, not on this basis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The objector, what conditions would you like to see attached if we are going to approve it tonight? What conditions would, to be very clear, what conditions would you like to be see attached to this application?
Well, Councillor, not being an expert in these things, I'm not quite sure what kind of conditions it is possible to attach to such applications. I was given to believe that it would be necessary to not approve this application at this stage and, in a sense, let it be overtaken. But if you were to impose a condition of, I don't know, a time period within which an application from all 5 of the houses was brought forward, I don't know if that's possible. But that might be one way of squaring the circle.
Thanks, Chair. Question to the applicant, Mr. Senior. I understand, based on the proposed changes, the uniformity of that, entire street would be gone. I'm just looking at the maps now. You said there's an agreement within your building leaseholders, which is appropriate and historic based on that. Is that because of the aesthetics that you made a conclusion, or is it because of safety? What is your prime, highest preference for the changes? Thank you.
The door that we have is not safe. It doesn't close properly. It's predominantly glass. We don't find it's in keeping with the building. We all have worked together to refurbish the exterior of the building, to purchase our freehold, to refurbish the inside of the building. We feel that now is the right time to do it, not at a later date. We have the momentum, we've put the funds together between us to be able to pay for the door to be done, and we feel that this is the right time for it to be done, not at a later date which is undetermined.
Thank you. If I may follow up, thank you, Chairman. Question to Mr. Koliko, obviously on behalf of all the objectors, is that a fair assumption that one thing, they're going back to the historic aesthetics or the uniformity of the building would obviously would be collapsed because there's a difference between the proposed and the existing glass doors. But based on the concerns raised by the applicant, in fair assumptions, would that make a big difference in terms of visuals and aesthetics?
Would what make a big difference?
The fabric of the outlook would change significantly. So, in your assumption, would that a big change in terms of looks and fabric of the building?
Yes, indeed it would. I mean, I think what is proposed is much better than what is there, and is clearly nearer in keeping. But I would like to give the opportunity for that to be done uniformly across all of those buildings. I don't think that timing is necessarily of the essence. Many of us have lived in those buildings for many, many years, and over that time we've been convinced and wanted to actually change those doors because they are out of character. And I agree with the applicant that they are now shoddy and not particularly secure. So we do want to get on with it and change them. But let's do it. Let's do it in a uniform way, which preserves the character of that particular terrace and also the neighbourhood.
So, in principle, you're happy, but not with the timing and the agreement with other leaseholders, the other building property leaseholders.
Yes, I would want to bring everybody along so that everybody is bought into. If it is the design which has been proposed for 41 that everybody is happy with, then that's fine. But that's very different from them being faced with a decision that that's where one of them has gone, and therefore, in order to preserve the integrity of the terrace, they have to go along with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions? No. Okay, so questions to officers. Actually, I'll lead off on this, I think. So I'd like to ask officers. We've got two well, a principle and a sensible observation, I think. The principle is that, as the applicant says, applications must be considered on their own merits, and I think it's, well, to my mind, it's quite clear the proposed new door is an improvement on what's there at the moment. I suppose the sensible observation, sensible comment, is that in these situations it would clearly be helpful if on this terrace something was agreed among all of the people who live there, and the thing could all happen within a sort of relatively short time frame. How do we try and square that circle, if indeed we can?
Thank you. Yes, it is a really tricky and difficult situation. I completely understand with the points of the objectors. However, we do have a statutory duty that we have to determine applications in front of us, and each application we have to determine on its own merit. The officers have made the assessment based on this replacement doors and concluded it's acceptable. Anything in terms of ownership, that is a civil matter that we wouldn't be involved with as planning authority. We do have to make an assessment whether it's harmful or preserves or has got acceptable impact in terms of character and appearance of the conservation area and impact on the neighboring properties. So I do find it really difficult for us to actually try to make the applicants to submit the joint application, because it's true maybe some other owners wouldn't agree to the approach they're going to take.
Okay, thank you for that. Colleagues, any other questions? Lloyd?
Thank you. Another difficult case, I might say. On a conservation area basis, obviously there is a willingness and a want for an applicant to improve their door, and quite understandably. But as a borough, I would hate to go past that terrace in 2 years' time and think, oh dear, there's a higgledy-piggledy choice of doors here because everybody's done their own thing. So I'm narrowing this question down on a conservation area basis, and I presume a conservation area officer has looked at this. Surely there must be an advantage, even though it might mean refusing this now, but the advantage has got to be long-term, because if these doors were put in the 1940s, we don't want to be waiting another generation to get it right next time. And this is obviously historic, and I look at the comments from Sophia Lambert from the Ladbroke Association, which is a very well-respected resident association for the conservation area, and that does have to take some weight. So I would say on a conservation area basis, would there be any harm done if the end result was different doors to this, or would the benefit to the conservation area for the long term be that there is at least a reasonable period of time given, and I would say months, not years, to this happening? Is that clear? Sorry.
Yes, I think so. Yes, it is clear. In terms of the impact on the conservation area, officers has concluded that there will be actually enhancement, because the existing doors, as we heard tonight and members saw it, they're not of the highest quality. So the proposed replacement of a black timber doors with less glazing, it is an improvement on a host property, and the wider terrace, those doors across the borough. I do understand your concern in terms of the other terraces and the uniformity within the group. but I think you do have to make the assessment on front of you, of the case in front of you, rather than looking what might have happened, because maybe the other owners are happy with the other door, and that's the assessment you'll have to make, and whether they're not going to go with the same design may be different. That's something we'll have to review when we've got the application in front of us.
Any other comments? Mo?
Is deferring the application, this application, out of question? Could we say we could defer, we'll ask for deferring this for 30 days to consult with all residents or interested parties before coming back?
I mean, it is within your rights to defer the application. However, I would advise against it. We do have an extension of time on this application. The applicant might want to appeal for non-determination if we're not making a decision on it. I mean, the applicant is here tonight, and I think you've heard what they said about the timescale. But deferring the decision, it is within your rights. But I would advise you to be quite cautious about it.
Yeah, in this case, could we? So
deferring, it's very constricting to. What if the other party are not ready to go and decide now in a 30-day period? They want to have the same doors or similar doors, or even doors they can agree on. So it's very tricky in that sense, because you're assuming those who are the other residents are ready to do something within 30-day period.
Yes, I completely agree. That's right.
Yeah, I think there's a danger here of I think we're moving away from something that's quite fundamental to how the planning system works, that applicants are entitled to put forward their applications. Now, I absolutely agree with the comments that have been made that in this particular circumstance, the Ladbroke Association and the people who, gentlemen who've spoken, these are respected local bodies and people, and it would, in an ideal world, we would very much want some agreement to be reached. But I think that desire does not really move us away from the fact that this application represents an improvement. The application needs to be considered on its own merits. If we were to refuse it, actually if we were to defer it, it could be appealed, and I can see, frankly, I can see no grounds on which it could possibly any sort of appeal on refusal on our part could be sustained. Quite honestly, I think I need to be very. I think it's important that I'm quite clear-cut about that. So it's sometimes things are there's an obviously a desirable course, but it's not actually one that we can insist that anybody takes, and I think that's just a fact. So there we go. I think we need to have a vote, and we'll see where we go from there. Obviously, if you're still not happy, you could always abstain. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please, to grant? Can I see those against? Okay, so the recommendation is not adopted. Okay, so perhaps Julia and Wade, perhaps you could assist us, excuse me, in suggesting maybe there, I mean, within consideration of conservation areas, I suppose it can be argued that there is consistency is something that's important. I mean, what is there at the moment? I think it is consistent. Well, it's consistent in being quite modern and not particularly nice, but it is consistent. You could sort of say that. I don't know, I think officers perhaps are the best people to ask for our assistance on this. Could you help at all, Julia, or maybe Wade? Or
yes, absolutely. I think from the conversation we're having is probably something you might want to think about uniformity within the group of building, more than the conservation area as a whole. I think the group of the buildings that it forms this application form with the others, and the design of the existing doors and uniformity within that's something you probably want to focus on.
So we would be, so the reason, the resolution to refuse would have to be framed in terms of the fact this was a particular group of buildings. Yes, is that what you're saying? You feel that would be the best?
Yeah, I think that would be the best way
forward. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other reasons that you think could sensibly be put forward?
It's probably just that one, the impact on and the materials. Yeah, I think it's just the uniformity across the terrace.
Yeah, no, because I think it would be hard to argue that the materials suggested are acceptable. Okay, so what I would suggest that we do, we need to vote on a resolution to refuse planning permission on the basis of what Julia's just said there. Now that has to be proposed by somebody. Councillor North is prepared to propose, and Councillor Bakhtiar is prepared to second. So that is the resolution, in front of us. Can I see those in favour of that resolution, please? Those against? Okay, so that resolution is adopted by 3 votes to 2, with myself and Councillor Areti abstaining. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, so if we can now move on to consider the application at 17 to 19 Cottesmore Gardens, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to bring members' attention to the addendum report. Some additional representations being received. This application is seeking changes to previously granted scheme. In 2023, planning permission have been granted for Thomas's School to relocate from this site to Atlantic House, and for this site to be converted back to residential use. This current application is seeking permissions for various alterations, including relocation of the plant room, additional air bricks and vents, amendments to and size of the layout of the lift, and changes to the units without changes to the mix of units itself. Also lift overrun and changes to fenestrations. So I'll just run through some of these slides. So this is the site location plan of the property outlined in red, is the corner property. The area view, again, members can see this is the existing property. Site photograph. And there are some previously granted and currently proposed plans. So this one is the front elevation. The previously approved scheme is on the left-hand side, and the proposed is on the right-hand side. Then we've got the side elevation, again approved on the left and proposed on the right. Rear elevation, approved on the left and proposed on the right. Roof plans, and previously approved and currently proposed some visuals. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
you very much. So we have speakers for this case. If I can ask Mr. Purchase and Mrs. Hunting, you're present?
Chair, yes, we are both. Mrs.
I'm
Hunting.
sorry?
Yes, we are. I'm Mr. Purchase.
Yes.
And Mrs. Hunting is to my
Mrs.
right.
Hunting is there. Very good. Well, when you're ready, please, you've got up to 3 minutes shared between you, so please go ahead.
I'm grateful, Chair. I'm going to speak on the one remaining part of my objections, which is the need to have a consultation period on the detailed designs for the access to the rejected terraces. And Mrs. Hunting is going to speak to sound. Now, standing back, I feel a sense of déjà vu. We were here in January 2023, and this committee rejected a series of terraces following a careful deliberation over some hours with this and the related applications. In 2024, this application was put in. They included planters on the rejected terraces. Quite how the applicant could possibly think that they were complying with the condition to respect this as not being used as amenity space, I do not know. They appear to play any lip service to this committee. So that's why it is essential when the applicant finally submits detailed plans for the access to these rejected terraces that there is a public 21-day consultation period. Why? There are 4 reasons. The first, access to the rejected terraces is crucial in ensuring they are not used as amenity space. This committee is wise enough to see that if there are nice French windows leading onto an enticing flat roof space, they will be used as amenity space regardless of the conditions. We just heard, I think earlier, from Mr. Lennon on 49 Bassett Road saying that the space will be used. It'll be a headache for enforcement, so these design plans need to be scrutinised carefully. Second point, there is a real danger with this application, given its history, that what we're going to have in the detailed plans will, by the back door, pun intended, allow access to these roof spaces and them to be used in breach of the condition. We know that from what has happened. We know that from the proposal to reinstate planters. We also know that from the drawings, which when you look at them closely, you can't see them in your plans, seem to have little diamonds on what's proposed to be French windows. And guess what? They are on each of those rejected terraces. Why would the applicants submit plans for French windows on those terraces that have been rejected unless they have a view to them being at least enticing to be used as amenity space? Third point, as the applicant shows, the local community have picked up points that have not been picked up by the officers, so scrutiny is helpful. And fourthly, this will place no burden on the applicant. I'm now going to hand over to Mrs. Hunting. I can help with questions in due course.
Good evening. Our principal concerns are noise. We live at 15 Cottesmore Gardens and share a party wall with 17. The walls between these terraced houses are not designed for multiple occupation and are not soundproof. We are alarmed to see that kitchen units with noise-sensitive work surfaces and machinery are set directly against the party walls with our main bedrooms. Also, bathrooms are to have plumbing against party walls with our bedrooms, our main living room and my study. Condition 21 of the Director of Planning's report provides for an acoustic report to be submitted to prevent the transmission of excessive noise. We feel that there should be no noise, or at least minimal noise, in a modern building. We are also very worried about disturbance from the plant unit. The plant noise planning report states candidly that the closest worst affected noise-sensitive windows will be our windows. We want to be sure from the start that we will never be disturbed by any audible noise, because we do not want to have to engage in any arguments to get the plant switched off. At the very least, we would much appreciate being consulted about this acoustic report.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Now, tell me, is the applicant represented? Right. Please, in similar fashion, you've got up to 3 minutes as well when you're ready.
Good evening, members, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address you this evening. I'd firstly like to take this opportunity to thank your officers for their time and effort during the application determination period, their detailed report in front of you this evening, and for their presentation. The application relates to minor amendments to development approved by the Council's Planning Committee in January 2023. The application seeks approval for a small number of changes to the consented scheme, which are largely necessitated in order to ensure compliance with building and fire regulations. Opportunities to enhance the design and residential quality have also been identified through the ongoing detailed design process, which has been continuing since planning consent was granted. The proposed changes do not alter the project design intention, and the development would continue to preserve the character and appearance of the De Vere Conservation Area. The consented principles of development remain unchanged, and there is no change to the number or mix of the proposed residential dwellings. The proposals do not seek to alter any of the consented external amenity spaces, and the inaccessible flat roofs to the property will remain so. This will be controlled by planning conditions which are carried across from the original consent, with details of terraces including doors and access all required to be submitted and approved prior to the relevant part. In summary, the proposals are minor in nature, and the development remains in conformity with the adopted development plan as has been concluded by your officers. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you, and I would welcome any questions that you have, and I am also joined by our project architect who would also be willing to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, questions? Anyone got any questions? Well,
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually to the applicant. I'm not clear. Was there any changes to the balconies at the back?
Not as part of this application, no.
No, not at all. Because the objector was talking about the French windows being used as terraces and for people to go out. And the French windows are, I'm thinking, you're talking about the back, not the front?
Yes, I believe they're talking about the back. There is a bit of there's a history to this application, and the previous application, the original submission, there was terraces shown on the rear. This is back in 2022. When the application was determined at committee back in the beginning of 2023, there was changes made to prevent those terraces from being used, so they're now inaccessible, and that's controlled by the conditions on the consent. But this application makes no changes to that.
So the terraces still exist, but they're not to be used. Is that what you're saying?
There's flat roofs there, yes, but they're inaccessible.
And do they have any banisters or anything, or just a railing, or just?
So there's some planters shown on the drawings. I know that there's a condition that's been added that would prevent those associated fixed planters to be erected, and there's also there's a condition requiring details to be submitted of the doors and windows onto the flat roofs, as well as the details of the other terraces that are consented. And there's also the conditions to prevent them from being used at any time.
So they're there, but they're not supposed to be used for entertainment or sitting outside?
They're simply flat roofs.
Flat roofs, okay, thank you.
I'd like to go next. I'd just like to ask the applicant's representative, presumably you accept the change to the conditions in the addendum report, which remove planters and other things from the flat roofs. You accept that, do you?
Yes.
Your client accepts that? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Chairman, you've asked my question, but so you're happy with the condition that it's not an unlimited usage, it's only when, I don't know, when repairs or something like that?
Correct, we can accept that.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you.
Actually, I think I got in before almost all of my colleagues with that question. Okay. Are there any other questions? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that. So, questions to the officers?
Yeah.
Walla, do you want to go first?
Yeah, following on, thank you, Chair. Following on from my last point about the flat roof not being used, and now we have the condition that the planters need to be removed. What can we do by way of enforcement to make sure that tenants coming in don't get ideas and start thinking, having barbecues and and whatnot?
Thank you. Yeah, so I think I would like members to look at condition 29 and 30. It has clearly said that the fixed planters shall not be erected on site, the same with the associated railings. So if, for example, the neighbors would see that there are planters or railings, that's something our enforcement team can investigate, and that would be in breach of that condition because they can't have planters or railings on those levels. And I don't think the speakers in the addendum report, there is a change in the wording of the condition just to straighten a little bit the terraces. So it just includes the first floor plan as well within the condition.
In other words, it's made quite explicit that there can't be planters and other things put on the flat roofs, and you're happy with the wording, and it applies to all of these so-called flat roof spaces.
Yes, along the west elevation and at the rear.
Yes.
I can bring up the plans if members wants to.
Okay, because I remember, obviously like Mr. Purchase, I was very much there at the original committee in January 23, and these terraces were very much part of the discussion about Cottesmore Gardens. It was an important part of the discussion that I think it was universally agreed that, particularly if you lived at sort of right angles to Cottesmore Gardens, that clearly there was an issue about overlooking and noise. If people, if you created terraces that could be used. Are there any other questions anyone has? No. Okay. Well, in that case, I think that we can probably make a decision on this. So the recommendation is to grant, but obviously bearing in mind the conditions, including the addendum report, change to the conditions to make it even more explicit that these flat roofs cannot be used as terraces. Can I see those in favour of the recommendations, please? So that is agreed. That's agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Let's just have a short break, a couple of minutes. you. I think we can resume now. So the next application is the one in Victoria Road. Julia, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. There are no speakers on this application, however, given its link with the previous one members heard this evening, I thought it would be appropriate to just show you some of the plans. So I would like to bring members' attention to the addendum report again. This application is seeking changes to a previously granted scheme. Again, in 2023, permission was granted for Thomas's School to relocate from this site to Atlantic House and to convert this one into residential use. Similar as Cottesmore Gardens, the application is seeking permission for changes to the plant room, brick, vents, sizes and layout of the units without a change of the mix, lift overrun and changes to fenestration. Just quickly run through some slides. Members can see the area view of the existing property, site photograph of the front, and again, as the previous application, previously granted and currently proposed, this one is the front elevation, rear elevation, side elevation, another side elevation previously granted and proposed, and a roof plan. And the last one is the previously granted scheme and the currently proposed visual. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any questions? As Julia said, there are no speakers, so we go directly to questions. Any questions? No. I think yes. I think this is a series of variations, essentially, to the application that we granted as part of the January 23 consideration of the whole Thomas's schemes.
Yes, yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, colleagues, if there are no questions, I think we can probably move directly to a vote. The recommendation is that we grant, with obviously the various agreements that have to be put in place as well, as set out in the report. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? So that is agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. If we can now move across to the southern pack and the application at 9, the Little Boltons. And that's going to be Amanda Peck. Amanda, well.
Thank you. I believe we have no speakers to this application either. I've got nothing further to add to the committee report. It's just to draw your attention to the addendum agenda, where we have one further objection received since the committee report was published, and an amendment to the condition 2, the drawing numbers, just to remove all reference to all the documents, so it's a much shorter condition now. And apologies, that's the reason why your agenda was so long in the members' pack. Thanks.
Yes, that was an insight for members into the amount of documentation that is involved in a major, well, a substantial application for a development. Are there any questions? I just wanted to clarify an important point. A lot of objectors have raised this issue as to the accommodation, the exact accommodation in the buildings, and we are satisfied that I think a certificate of lawful use was issued and agreed. Obviously, that involved looking at what we consider the balance of probabilities of the use and that sort of thing. So that issue, which a lot of people have been concerned with, I think is, from our point of view this evening, is a non-issue. So I just wanted to check that that's
yes, the drawings that have been submitted are the same as the certificate.
That is correct. So any questions? Wella.
Chair. And there is complaints. I'm looking at some of the comments, and there is concern about the bay window not being acceptable. Can you talk to me about it? And just is that the case? Because I'm not sure what's acceptable, what's not.
Yes, this is a semi-detached pair of properties, and the other half of the pair has a bay window, which was, I think it's been in place for about 40 years. So the objectors are concerned that it's not a characteristic feature in the street. But as long as it's well designed, we feel it's acceptable and wouldn't have harmed the conservation area. And we feel that in this instance, just because the other half of the pair has a bay window at that level, it's acceptable.
It is not in the lower, because is it on the lower ground or is it on the ground level? The bay
No,
window?
the bay window is on the first floor. I think I've got a photo.
Because my understanding is they're not happy because it is on the lower ground.
I'm just getting the photo up on the presentation.
No problem. I can answer it as well. So the proposed bay window extensions at first floor level, there's an existing bay at lower ground and ground.
Okay.
So this would extend it up to the first floor level, which would match the opposite neighbor.
But it's not going to stand out in the area, and it's not going to look different than the rest of the buildings?
Because oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you carry.
Yep. I was just going to say, the photo on the left on the slide there is the pair of semi-detached properties. So the application site is the one on the left with the trees in front of it. And you can see the white bay window on the first floor level is the one at next door's property. So it's going to be a better design than that. It's much more detailed and matches the bay window on the lower floor, but it's in that sort of location.
But then, see, it is a better design, it's aesthetically far more pleasing, but in the conservation area, my understanding is things need to be symmetrical and more or less equal, and that's where they are more pleasing, as opposed to something stand out by itself.
Yeah, we feel it's a sympathetic addition to the property, and it's not going to harm the character and appearance of the conservation area. So it will be visible because it's on the front elevation, so you will see it, but we feel it's a sympathetic addition.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Lloyd.
Very good. Are there any other questions? No? Well, in that case, it's a fairly substantial application about a very substantial building. The recommendation is to grant, obviously with the conditions set out in the report. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? Okay, so that's granted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. If we can now move back to the North Pack, please, to 48 Camden Hill Road. So that's back to Julia.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is seeking planning permission for re-extensions, terrace, and replacement of various windows. There are no speakers for this one, but members can just see the existing proposed re-elevation in front of you. The existing elevation on the left-hand side and proposed on the right-hand side. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So there seems here to be there's a sort of tidying up going on of the rear of the building essentially, but there isn't, from what I can make out, there isn't anything that's completely inconsistent with what's elsewhere in obviously one of the finest sort of terraces, parts of a square in Kensington. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's quite a lot of variation in terms of the re-extensions along this group of properties.
Any questions? Lloyd?
Yes, Chair. I would like to confirm, as it is in my ward, yes, it is one of the most finest squares, I would say, but I'm biased in that. However, I've got a question, and I can't find my notes on it, about a tree that was cut down. It was mentioned as one of the objectors. If you could confirm if that was a problem?
Thank you. I would like to refer member to paragraph 6.1. The council tree office has been consulted on the proposal. There are conditions recommended to provide suitable replacement tree in the front garden and also provide tree protection details for the retained trees on site. So there will be a suitable replacement tree at the front.
That's reassuring, thank you.
Okay. Well, in that case, the recommendation is to grant permission with the conditions attached as set out in the report. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? So that is agreed. Thank you. If we can now turn to the South Pack again and the application in Moore Street.
Again, there are no speakers for this application, so there's nothing further to add on the committee report and the addendum. Just to note in the addendum that one of the drawings in your drawing pack was an older drawing, and I have the trellis on the south elevation was amended during the course of the assessment, and that's all covered in the report, but it's just that the drawing was in error in the reports pack. Thanks.
Can you explain what was the error? It was the trellis has been removed. Is that right? Am I remembering this right?
Yes, yeah, as submitted, the extension is in the rear garden, so on the left of that section there, and as submitted they were proposing to raise the boundary with some trellis in an attempt to disguise the extension, and during the course of the application we had an objection against that element, and we also had an objection saying it should be higher, but the applicant amended the scheme so it's now no longer included in the trellis. So I think the drawing in your pack shows the trellis, so it's just to be clear that's not part of it. It's drawing 023, I believe, in your pack.
Okay, if we can just, I think it's important that we just note that, and if officers have a note of that. Okay. Any questions about this? No? Okay, well, in that case, here the recommendation is to grant with the conditions attached. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? Those against? Are you abstaining, Wally? Yeah, okay. So that's granted by 4 votes to none, but with Councillor Idris abstaining. Okay. Thank you very much. If we can return to the North Pack, please, for Albert House in Kelso Place. Julia.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this application is seeking approval to discharge condition 14, which relates to a CTMP. Condition planning permission was granted for various alterations to the building, including infill extensions, changes to facade, AC units, changes to windows and doors. The submitted CTMP has been reviewed by the Council Highways Officer, and it has been concluded that submitted information are acceptable, and the recommendation is to grant the details. Thank you.
Okay. I guess the key point here is that we're satisfied that, because this is essentially a set of residential streets with this commercial building rather unusually sort of in the middle of it. But the highways officers are confident that we've sorted out a CTMP that can work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. The site is very constrained and is surrounded by residential properties. As Chairman mentioned, it is just a unusual situation within the borough, but our officers were satisfied with the CTMP. Lots of works will take place within the site as well, rather than on street. There are some instances they would be on street, but majority of works would be happening inside the property.
Any questions about that? No. Okay. Well, on that basis, this is the discharge of a condition. Can I see those in favour of discharging the condition as set out in the report? See those in favour? So that is agreed. Thank you. Next, if we stay in the North Pack and we go to buildings I think owned by the council, if I recall, in Hewer Street.
That's correct, and this is the last application from the North Park this evening. RBKC is the applicant, therefore the application is in front of members tonight. The application is seeking permission for a canopy to the front of the property, and the recommendation is to approve it. Thank you.
I think, as I recall, this is actually an extremely, we don't have a photograph, but this is an extremely modest, sort of modern glass canopy in front of, I think, 2 entrances. Is that right? Am I remembering this? Just one. Okay. Any questions, colleagues, about that? Lloyd.
Yes, I've seen the property as part of one of the scrutiny exercises. I'm acutely aware that this is a substantial development of an RBKC property and a very handsome property, formerly of funeral directors, if I believe. And my only concern is, and it's not clear from the papers here, is this going to stand out on a period property like a sore thumb, being a modern canopy over a historic building? And I'd like to know on a conservation area basis if you're happy that this adds to the conservation area rather than detracts from it. And it is only the one property, not all of them matching.
Yeah, yes, you are correct. There's only just going to be one within this group. However, there's other examples within the wider estate. They've got similar canopy already. The officers went around on site. In terms of the design, it is a very modest. It's just a glass canopy with some metal brackets to hold it. So in terms of the conservation area, we were satisfied in terms of the design and impact. That will be okay.
So I understand it's not an original feature being copied. This is something that's being added.
Yes.
And it's added to only one of the doors that were there, so it's going to stand out odd. So you're saying that the conservation area architect is happy that this doesn't detract from a period building with a non-original feature, and it adds to the conservation area?
That's correct.
Very good. So the recommendation is that we grant permission for this. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? So that is agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you. If we can now go back to the South Pack and the property 38 Cranley Gardens, please. So Amanda, that's back to you, isn't it?
Yep, this is a listed building and a planning application at this property, and I believe there's no speakers. We have nothing to add, nothing in the addendum report, and I've got nothing to add to the committee report, but if you have any questions. So it's the one for the a roof terrace and a hatch.
So this is principally a reconfiguration of a property, but being a listed building, it means it obviously must come in front of us. Colleagues, any questions about anything in the report on this? No? Okay. Well, in that case, Mo, yeah, please go ahead.
This is only for access, not for use, roof terrace, to be used for partying, barbecue, or things like that.
No, it is for the use of the terrace. So there's an existing balustrade on the front and the rear, so an existing fence on the terrace, and there is actually access at the minute. So this is for a new access hatch to make it a more sort of permanent access, and then where the balustrades are at the front and the rear, the proposal includes some planters. We've got a condition on asking for details of the planters, because I believe a number of the objectors will query what the planters would look like.
I think the point, thank you. I think the point being that because the terrace exists, it's really not within our gift. We can't take away something that already exists, essentially. So that I think is an important consideration. So we have planning permission and listed building consent. Can I see those in favour of the planning permission being granted? Okay, so that's agreed. And also listed building consent. Can I see those in favour of granting listed building consent? So that is also agreed. Thank you. So the penultimate application is 36 Glebe Place, again in the South Pack. So Amanda.
Yeah, this is an RBKC application, and essentially it's the replacement of a front door and refurbishment of the windows. There's nothing further to add on the committee report and nothing in the addendum. Thanks.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions about this? No, it's be interesting to know how the borough ended up being the owner of such a smart property as this, actually. But no, it's clearly important and useful refurbishment of a property. Councillor Idris is saying, is it like for like? The changes are quite modest, aren't they, I think, if I recall?
Yes, there's a basement door underneath the light well, which is like for like, and I believe it's a similar design. It's an improvement because the existing door has glass panels, so this is a full timber door, yeah.
Okay. Can I see, for the planning permission, can I see those in favour of granting the planning permission, please? So that is agreed. And also listed building consent. Those in favour, please. So that is agreed as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. And finally this evening, we come to the property 5 Mallard Street, which again, we're still in the South Pack. So, Amanda.
Lovely. So the one thing I have to add further to the committee report and the addendum report is that the wording for condition 9 is slightly wrong. So I propose that there's one sentence in condition 9, so that's regarding contamination, and the sentence starts with GEA desktop study and it ends at 20th September 2024. And if that sentence is deleted from the condition, then the condition is actually in line with what was suggested and then our standard condition recommended by Environmental Health. It seems to have been a report from another application included.
I'm tempted to suggest that we might remove all these conditions except condition 12, which simply says if there's unexpected contamination, then clearly that needs to be addressed. But I'm not going to press the issue. Colleagues, any questions about this? All right. Well, in that case, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? So that is agreed. Thank you very much. And thank you very much indeed, everyone, for listening and coming along. Thank you.